I was arrested 3 times in one day, and it wasn't even my fault. Well, maybe the third one was a little my fault, but I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Valerie Vance. I'm 38 years old. I write romance novels for a living, and I have a collection of novelty straws that I will defend with my life. If that sounds like the setup to a joke, trust me, the punchline is a lot less funny when you're the one in handcuffs. At least, that's what I kept telling myself while I was being dragged out of my apartment by a police officer who looked like he'd stepped off a magazine cover. Tall, broad shoulders, sharp jaw, eyes the color of dark coffee. He was the kind of handsome that made you forget what you were doing and why you were doing it. Which is probably why it took me a solid 30 seconds to realize he was reading me my rights. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. Wait, what? I twisted my neck to look up at him. What did I do? I've been inside for 4 months. I haven't even seen another human being except through my delivery app. The handsome officer, I'd later learn his name was Ethan Hayes, didn't flinch. We received a tip regarding suspicious activity. You're going to have to come with us. Suspicious activity? I write about suspicious activity. I don't do suspicious activity. He didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just escorted me out of my apartment while my neighbors, a collection of retirees who had nothing better to do than watch me, gathered in the hallway like it was a neighborhood block party. My neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, was front and center, clutching her pearls like she'd just witnessed a murder. That's her, she told another officer. That's the one that I've been saying it for months. The crying at night, the weird things in her window, the way she never goes outside. Those are my straws. I shouted over my shoulder as they led me to the cruiser. They're decorative. They're from Etsy. You can't arrest me for having weird straws. The cruiser door slammed shut. I sat in the back, staring through the grill at the handsome officer's impassive face in the rearview mirror, and wondered if this was how my life was going to end. Not with a bang, but with a misunderstanding about a collection of whimsical drinking accessories. 2 hours later, I was sitting in an interrogation room, holding a cup of terrible coffee, and trying to explain to Officer Hayes that I was not, in fact, a drug dealer. I'm a novelist, I said for the 5th time. I write romance. Sometimes it's a little spicy, but that's not illegal. It's not even a crime. It's just bad literature. He was staring at me from across the table, his expression completely unreadable. The crying at night? Writer's block. It gets really bad around chapter 12. I sometimes yell at my characters. They're not listening, and it's deeply frustrating. The pale complexion? I haven't seen the sun in 4 months. I sleep during the day and write at night. My schedule is a disaster. I'm low on vitamin D, and yes, I look like a ghost. That's not a crime either. And he consulted his notepad. The strange objects in the window? I leaned forward. Have you ever seen a straw shaped like a dinosaur? Or one that glows in the dark? Or one that has little plastic arms that wave at you while you drink? Because they're art, officer. They're functional art. I can show you my collection if you want. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he set down his pen and did something I hadn't expected. He laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh, more of a quiet exhale, like he was genuinely surprised by the absurdity of what I'd just said, but it transformed his face. Suddenly, he wasn't just handsome, he was real. The kind of real that made you want to know what he looked like when he wasn't working, when he wasn't wearing a uniform, when he wasn't holding a notepad and staring at you like you were a puzzle he couldn't solve. Ms. Vance, he said, your test results are back. They're clean. You're free to go. Clean? I blinked. Of course they're clean. I don't do drugs. I barely do caffeine. I'm too busy imagining the emotional arcs of fictional people to have time for criminal activity. He handed me a form to sign. Your neighbor reported you. Said she heard strange noises, saw unusual objects in your window, and assumed you were running some kind of operation out of your apartment. Mrs. Patterson. I signed the form with a flourish. She's the one who brings me cookies when she thinks I'm not eating enough. She also once called the police because she thought my cat was dead. He was just sleeping. He's a heavy sleeper. Officer Hayes nodded slowly, like he'd heard this kind of thing before. I'll make a note to follow up with her about making false reports. Don't. I surprised myself by saying it. She's lonely. She means well. She just doesn't know how to mind her own business. She's the only neighbor I have who still talks to me. He looked at me with something like curiosity. You don't have friends? I have one friend. She lives an hour away, and she's having a much more interesting life than I am. And honestly, I write about people who have relationships. I don't actually have to participate in one to do my job. He held my gaze for a moment longer than necessary. Then he stood up and opened the door. You're free to go, Ms. Vance. I gathered my bag and walked past him, pausing at the threshold. For the record, I said, the straws are glow in the dark. They're really cool. You should see them sometime. His mouth twitched. I told myself it wasn't a smile. My friend Sarah picked me up outside the station. She took one look at my face and burst into laughter. 4 months of isolation, and you still managed to get arrested? She was still laughing as I climbed into her car. You're a legend, Val. A complete legend. It's not funny. I was innocently writing my novel and I gestured vaguely. There were handcuffs involved. A lot of handcuffs. Oh, I'm sure you loved that. Sarah, focus that I need to decompress. I need to do something completely mundane and normal that doesn't involve being dragged out of my home by a beautiful police officer who wouldn't even crack a smile at my jokes. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, there's a new spa opening near my place. Very high-end. Very expensive. I'll treat you if you promise not to get arrested there too. You're the best friend a falsely accused woman could ask for. The spa was called Serenity Heights. It had soft lighting, candles that smelled like lavender, and a receptionist who looked at me like I was exactly the kind of person who needed to be there. I filled out a waiver, changed into a robe, and lay face down on the massage table. For the first time in 4 months, I felt my shoulders start to relax. And then the door burst open. I didn't have time to react before I was handcuffed again. This time, it was a female officer, a woman with a firm grip and an expression that said she'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for participating in illegal activities at this establishment." I blinked. Illegal activities. I'm getting a massage. Did I have a shoulder injury from typing too much? And why posture is a disaster. Look at my shoulders. They're like rocks. Who would commit a crime with shoulders like these? The officer didn't answer. She just hauled me out of the room, past a stun-looking receptionist, and into the back of a police cruiser. 2 hours later, I was in a familiar interrogation room, staring at a familiar face across the table. Officer Hayes looked at me like I was a recurring dream he couldn't wake up from. "Ms. Vance," he said, "it's been less than 4 hours." I know. I held up my cuffed hands. I'm a fast learner. Also, this is a misunderstanding that I went to a normal spa, that I had a coupon, that I was trying to relax after being falsely arrested the first time. This establishment was flagged for offering services that aren't strictly legal. Services? I blinked. What services? I signed up for a shoulder massage. I didn't even have time to get the shoulder massage. They handcuffed me before the therapist could find a knot. He opened his laptop and turned it to face me. There was a list of services offered at the spa. Under a section labeled Special Packages, I saw phrases like sensory overload and full body release. I closed my eyes. "They name their standard massages that way," I said. "It's a marketing thing. They make everything sound dirty, so people feel like they're getting something exciting. I literally just wanted someone to work on my shoulders." The officer who brought you in said there was another customer in the adjacent room who was found without his clothes on. He claimed he was just getting a massage. I stared at him. "So, I'm being arrested because another man was naked in a separate room? That's not how the law works, right? There's a difference between proximity and complicity." He leaned back in his chair. "You have a point." "I have several points," I said. "And I'd like to make them in the presence of a lawyer who can explain to you that I am clearly, demonstrably, obviously not involved in anything illegal. I'm going to review the footage from their security system." "Good. Do that. And while you're at it, maybe get a warrant or whatever you need to do. I'm not going anywhere. Clearly." The footage exonerated me that of course it did. I was on the table for exactly 4 minutes before the raid started. There was no way I could have participated in anything even vaguely illegal in that amount of time. The same officer who'd cuffed me came in and told Officer Hayes the news. "She's clean," she said. "Different room, different therapist." They were still doing the intake paperwork when we arrived. Hayes nodded, unbuckled my cuffs, and stood up. "You're free to go." I rubbed my wrists. "I'm beginning to think you have a quota for how many times you can arrest the same person in a single day." "Not a quota," he said. "A tendency. Your tendency is ruining my life. If you're not participating in illegal activities, my tendency won't be a problem." I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped because he was right. And because he was looking at me with something that might have been concern, or might have been amusement, but was definitely something other than the professional detachment he'd shown me earlier. "You need a ride home?" he asked. "I'm not getting in another police cruiser." "I can call you a cab." I looked at him, at the way the fluorescent lights shadowed his jaw, at the exhaustion in his eyes that told me he'd been working a long shift. And I made a decision. "Fine," I said, "but I'm sitting in the front seat." The ride was quiet, the streets were dark. I was exhausted, embarrassed, and deeply aware that I'd just been arrested twice in one day by the same man who'd witnessed both of my most humiliating moments. "I'm sorry about today," he said, breaking the silence. "For what? Doing your job. For not listening when you tried to explain. The first time. I should have asked more questions before I brought you in." I turned to look at him. "Does it bother you, knowing you arrested an innocent person?" He was quiet for a moment. "Yes," he said, "it does. But I'd rather arrest 9 innocent people than let one guilty one get away." Comforting. I'm not trying to be comforting. I'm trying to be honest. I didn't know what to say to that, as I said nothing. But for the rest of the ride, I kept glancing at him out of the corner of my eye, trying to figure out who he was when he wasn't being a cop. And I couldn't, because all I knew was that he was handsome and capable and had probably saved 100 people from things worse than my misunderstanding about a massage parlor. He pulled up to my building and put the car in park. "Same time next week?" he asked, his face completely flat. Ha, you're hilarious." "I'm serious. I've got a feeling I'll see you again." "Because I'm that accident prone, or because you want to?" The question hung in the air between us, and I'd said it on impulse, the way I always did when I was tired and out of filters. But watching his expression shift, from professional to surprised, from surprised to something I couldn't quite read, made me realize I might have just opened a door I wasn't ready to walk through. He didn't answer. He just looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You've got my number. It's on the file. Call me if anything else happens." "I won't need to call you," I said. "Nothing else is going to happen. I'm going to go inside, lock the door, and never leave my apartment again." That seems a little extreme. After today, it seems perfectly reasonable. I got out of the car and walked to my building. I didn't look back, but I felt his eyes on me the whole way, and I told myself it didn't mean anything. Mrs. Patterson was waiting for me in the hallway. "Valerie," she said, wringing her hands. I was so worried. I saw the police come back, and I thought, "You called the police on me, Mrs. Patterson, twice." "Because I thought you were in trouble. I was trying to help." "I'm writing a book," I said, my voice shaking with exhaustion. "A book about people who fall in love and do ridiculous things and get themselves into trouble, but I'm not in trouble. I'm just lazy and pale, and I have weird taste in straws, that's all." She looked at me, her wrinkled face folding into something like remorse. "I'm sorry, Valerie, I get worried you're all alone in there. You never have visitors. You never go outside." I thought maybe. You thought maybe I was a drug dealer. I thought maybe you were a victim. The accusation surprised me. A victim of what? Of something. Of someone. Of yourself. She patted my arm. You're a good girl, Valerie. You just need to get out more. Meet people. Stop writing so much. I write for a living. Then write somewhere else. She smiled, small and tired. Come to dinner tomorrow. I'll make pot roast. And if you won't come, then at least let me bring you a plate. I sighed. The fight had gone out of me. Fini. But no more calling the police. If you want to know something about me, just knock on the door and ask. Deal. She shuffled back to her apartment, and I let myself into mine. The next morning, I woke up to a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, Mrs. Patterson called the station this morning. She wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding. I told her it was fine. She mentioned something about pot roast. If you don't show up, she might call again. Yach. Asterisk. I stared at the screen for a full minute. He'd given me his number. A direct line. Not a station line, not a work phone, his actual number. That's extortion, I typed back. Asterisk, it's public service. I'm saving you from another accidental arrest. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'd rather get arrested than eat pot roast with Mrs. Patterson. Asterisk. Asterisk, that bad. Asterisk. Asterisk, her pot roast tastes like regret and brown sugar. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'll keep that in mind. Asterisk. I set down my phone and stared at the ceiling. The handsome police officer who'd arrested me twice was now texting me about pot roast. This was not how I'd expected my week to go. This was not how I'd expected any week to go. But I couldn't stop smiling as I typed my reply. Asterisk, if I come to dinner and survive, do I get a reward? Asterisk. Asterisk, like what? Asterisk. Asterisk, like you don't arrest me next time we meet. Asterisk. Asterisk, that's not a reward. That's basic decency. Asterisk. Asterisk, then what would you consider a reward? Asterisk. His reply came 3 minutes later. Asterisk, coffee. If you survive the pot roast, I'll buy you coffee. Somewhere with normal straws. Asterisk. My heart skipped a beat. I told myself it was adrenaline. I told myself it was exhaustion. I told myself it was absolutely nothing. But the smile on my face said otherwise. I survived the pot roast. Barely, but I survived. Mrs. Patterson's cooking was exactly as I remembered, brown, unidentifiable, and seasoned with something that might have been cinnamon, or might have been regret. I ate enough to be polite, complimented her on her unique approach to beef, and was about to make my escape when she dropped the bomb. Valerie, there's someone I'd like you to meet. She beamed at me like she'd just won the lottery. My son, Luke. He's been staying with me for a few weeks while he's between jobs. Between jobs, the universal code for unemployed and living in his mother's basement. I forced a smile as a man in his late 30s shuffled into the kitchen. He was built like a refrigerator, broad, square, and slightly intimidating. His eyes traveled over me in a way that made my skin crawl. Luke, this is Valerie. She's the novelist I told you about. Lives alone in apartment 4B. Very quiet, very shy. She nudged him forward. Don't you think she's lovely? Luke grinned. It wasn't a friendly grin. It was the kind of grin that said he'd already decided what I was worth and was planning how to take it. Yeah, Mom. She's something. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. Thank you so much for dinner, Mrs. Patterson. I really should be going. Nonsense. She grabbed my arm with surprising strength. Stay for coffee. Luke was just about to tell us about his new business idea. I really can't. Come on, Valerie. Luke stepped closer, blocking the door. Don't be rude. My mom went to all this trouble for you. The warning bells in my head were deafening. I'd been writing thriller subplots for years, and every instinct told me I was standing in the middle of one. But instead of panicking, I did something I'd learned from my characters. I played along, just long enough to create an exit. Coffee sounds great, I said, sliding back into my chair. Luke, tell me about your business idea. I'm all ears. The next hour was a masterclass in manipulation. Luke talked about himself with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. He had big plans, he said. Big investments. He was going to be rich someday, and when he'd meet a wife who understood what it meant to support a visionary. I nodded in all the right places that I smiled if I asked follow-up questions that made him think I was interested. And while he was busy describing his unbeatable business plan, something involving cryptocurrency and his cousin's van, I carefully pulled out my phone and texted Sarah. Asterisk, stuck at neighbors with her creepy son. Need an excuse to leave. Call me in 5 minutes and pretend it's an emergency. Asterisk. Sarah responded within seconds. Asterisk, you owe me. Big time. Asterisk. 2 minutes later, my phone rang that I answered, feigning alarm. What? Oh my God, they'll be right there. I stood up, already heading for the door. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Patterson. There's a crisis at my apartment that I have to go. Luke's hand closed around my wrist. Stay. Whatever it is can wait. No, actually it can't. I pulled my arm free. And Luke, if you ever touch me again, I will call the police and file a report. My friend is a detective. She'll make your life very, very difficult. His face went red. You little. Good night, Mrs. Patterson. I slipped out the door and didn't look back. The hallway was empty when I reached my floor. I fumbled with my keys, hands shaking, and let myself into my apartment. I locked the door, double-locked it, wedged a chair under the handle. And then I sat on the floor and cried, not because I was afraid, I was too angry for fear. I cried because I'd been so careful, so isolated, so determined to protect myself, and I still ended up in a situation where a man twice my size thought he could grab me, and I'd just take it. I didn't deserve that. No one deserved that. I pulled myself together, went online, and ordered a security camera, the kind with motion detection and night vision, and an app that would alert me if anyone so much as breathed near my door. It arrived the next morning, and I spent an hour installing it, my fingers clumsy with residual adrenaline. That night, I finally slept. For 2 days, nothing happened. I told myself it was fine. I told myself Luke had given up. I told myself I was being paranoid. And then, at 1:47 a.m. on the third night, I heard the first bang. My eyes snapped open, and I grabbed my phone and pulled up the camera app. The feed showed Luke standing outside my door, swaying slightly, a bottle in his hand. He was drunk. And he was pounding on my door with his fist. Valerie, his voice was slurred and ugly. Open the door. I just want to talk. I pressed record on the app. Then I typed a quick message to Ethan, using the number he'd given me. Asterisk, the neighbor's son is at my door. Drunk. Banging. Please send help. Asterisk. I didn't wait for a reply. I called 911. By the time I'd given the dispatcher my address, Ethan was already texting me back. Asterisk, on my way. Don't open the door. Stay on the phone with me. Asterisk. I stayed on the phone. I kept recording. I watched through the camera as Luke kept banging, his face twisted and ugly, his voice climbing higher and higher. Open the door, you bitch. I know you're in there. I just want to talk. I felt nothing but cold resolve. This wasn't fear. This was evidence gathering. Ethan arrived in 4 minutes. I heard the commotion before I saw it. Raised voices, footsteps, the unmistakable sound of a struggle. Then the banging stopped. A moment later, there was a knock on my door, soft and controlled. Ms. Vance, it's Officer Hayes. He's been detained. You can open the door. I opened it. Ethan was standing in the hallway, his uniform rumpled, his face set in hard lines. Behind him, 2 uniformed officers were handcuffing a struggling, screaming Luke Patterson. She's lying, Luke shouted. She came onto me. She wanted it. Ask my mom. Shut up. Ethan's voice was ice. You're under arrest for harassment and attempted breaking and entering. You have the right to remain silent. I watched them drag Luke away, and then I looked at Ethan, really looked at him. He was breathing hard, like he'd run the whole way. His hands were still clenched. His jaw was tight. Are you okay? He asked. I'm fine. My voice came out steadier than I expected. I recorded the whole thing, on my camera, and on my phone. I have evidence. He stared at me. You recorded it? I know how this works now. You arrest people based on evidence, so I made sure I had some. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. Then his mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost something else. You're surprisingly competent at this. I've been arrested 3 times. I learned fast. The station was familiar by now. I signed forms, gave a statement, handed over my recordings. Luke was booked for harassment and drunk and disorderly. The best part, Mrs. Patterson showed up to bail him out, and I heard her tell the desk sergeant, my son is a good boy. He was just confused. He was trying to break into my apartment, I said loudly, while screaming obscenities. I have video. Want to see? She went pale. She didn't look at me again. By the time I was free to go, it was nearly 4 a.m. that I was exhausted, wired, and deeply aware that I couldn't go home. Not tonight. Not knowing Luke would be back on the street by morning, with a mother who'd already made excuses for him. Ethan caught me in the hallway. I'll drive you. To where? I can't go back there. He knows where I live. I know. He paused. There's a spare room in my apartment. It's not much, but it's safe. If you want. I should have said no. I should have called Sarah, gotten a hotel, done anything other than accept a ride from a man who'd arrested me twice. But I was exhausted, and he was offering safety. And something in his voice made me think he wasn't offering out of obligation. Okay, I said, just for tonight. His apartment was small but immaculate. Minimalist, like he'd arranged his furniture around the edges of his life. He showed me to a guest room with a bed that looked barely used. Bathrooms down the hall. There's extra toothbrushes under the sink. I'll be in the living room if you need anything. Ethan. I stopped him at the door. Thank you, for coming so fast, for not making me feel like this was my fault. His eyes softened. It's not your fault. He's the one who crossed a line. You did everything right. I didn't know why that made me want to cry, but it did. I blinked hard. Good night. Good night, Valerie. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Ethan was in the kitchen, wearing civilian clothes, jeans, and a t-shirt that did nothing to hide his build. He looked younger like this, less like an officer, more like a man. He was scrolling through his phone, but he looked up when I walked in. Sleep okay? Better than I have in weeks. I accepted the cup he handed me. Thanks for everything. The offer still stands, he said. The guest room, for as long as you need it. I'm not trying to be a hero. I just don't think you should go back until he's dealt with. I stirred my coffee. I can't stay forever. You won't have to. I'll make sure the case moves quickly. But in the meantime, I'm homeless and my only offer shelter is from a man who arrested me 3 times. This is not how I saw my life going. He laughed. A real laugh, warm and unexpected. I'm not going to arrest you again. I promise. That's not reassuring. You've arrested me twice when I was innocent. That means you're either really bad at your job or really good at finding me. Or, he said, maybe you're just really good at being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe I'm just really good at being memorable. He held my gaze. You are. I ended up staying. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was practical. That I told myself I'd be out as soon as the court date came. But the days turned into a week, and the week turned into 2. And somewhere in between, I started to realize I didn't want to leave. Ethan was surprisingly easy to live with. He was quiet, but not cold. He was neat, but not obsessive. He worked long hours, but he always texted if he was going to be late. He remembered my coffee order. He left my favorite snacks in the pantry. He didn't ask me to explain myself or my life or my weird straws. And somewhere between all of that, I started to notice other things. The way his hair curled at the collar of his uniform. The way his shoulders relaxed when he came home. The way he smiled at me when he thought I wasn't looking. I was in trouble. The idea came to me in a moment of accidental genius. I've been complaining about my insurance situation, how my rates were sky high because I'd been involved in multiple incidents, when Ethan said, you know, if you had a domestic partner, you could be on their plan. I looked at him, he looked at me, and something clicked. Domestic partner, I repeated. I wasn't suggesting. I'm suggesting. I sat up straighter. Ethan, what if we just pretended? Temporarily. I get your insurance, you get, what do you get? A tax break? A reason to tell people you're not available. He stared at me like I just proposed we rob a bank. You want to fake a relationship? I want to stop being arrested by you. And I want health insurance that doesn't cost my entire advance. This solves both problems. This is insane. This is the most practical idea I've had in months. And it's not like I'm asking you to actually date me. We just sign some papers, tell a few people. And when Luke's case is over and I'm back in my apartment, we quietly break up. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, you're serious. Dead serious. Valerie, I've known you for 3 weeks. You're asking me to pretend to be your partner. I'm asking you to help me survive the consequences of accidentally getting tangled up with a creepy neighbor and a system that doesn't believe in second chances. Is that so terrible? He stared at me. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. You're a terrible influence. Best compliment I've ever received. Fiend. He held out his hand. Partners? I shook it. Partners. The paperwork was surprisingly easy. We filed the affidavit, signed the forms, and within a week, I was officially on his insurance. I also had a key to his apartment and a toothbrush in the bathroom. And somewhere in the middle of all of that, I started to forget it was fake. The way he'd leave notes on the counter. Asterisk, gone to work. Don't forget to eat. Asterisk. The way he'd bring home takeout from the place I mentioned liking once. The way he'd sit on the couch beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his arm and never once try to make it more than it was. He was careful with me. Too careful. Like he was waiting for permission. I'd never been good at waiting, but I'd also never been good at asking. So I did what I always did when I didn't know what to do. I pretended everything was fine, and I kept my feelings locked away. The diary was an accident. I was looking for a pen in his bedroom. He'd said I could borrow anything, and I found it tucked in his nightstand. A worn leather journal with a broken spine. I shouldn't have opened it. I knew I shouldn't have opened it, but my name was on the first page. Asterisk Valerie Vance, that's her name. She was at the coffee shop today. She ordered a large black coffee and then spilled it on her lap and didn't even flinch. She just laughed. I've never heard anyone laugh like that. Asterisk. I flipped to the next page. And the next. Asterisk, she's in my station again. Not arrested, just walking past. She was wearing a blue scarf. It brought out her eyes. I wanted to say something, but I didn't. I never say anything. Asterisk. I kept reading. There were years of entries, years of observations. Years of a man who'd watched me from a distance, who'd known my name before I'd ever been arrested, who'd been there all along and never once made himself known. Asterisk, she laughed at my joke today. The one about the neighbors calling the police on her. She smiled, and I felt like I'd won something. Asterisk. Asterisk, she texted me. After the pot roast. She said she'd rather get arrested than eat Mrs. Patterson's cooking. I've never laughed so hard at a message. Asterisk. Asterisk, she's in my apartment. She's sleeping in the guest room. And I can't sleep because I keep thinking about how close she is, and how I can't tell her anything, and how this is probably the closest I'll ever get to actually knowing her. Asterisk. Asterisk, she wants to be partners. Just paper. Just insurance. I said yes because I couldn't say no. But I'm not pretending. I haven't been pretending for a long time. Asterisk. I closed the diary. My hands were shaking. He'd known me. He'd known me for years. He'd watched me from a distance, and he'd never said anything, and now I was living in his apartment, sleeping in his guest room, and he was pretending it meant nothing. But it meant everything. I set the diary back exactly where I'd found it. Then I walked to the living room, sat on the couch, and waited for him to come home. He walked in at 7. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped, his tie loosened. He smiled when he saw me. Rough day, he said. The station's been chaotic. I found your diary, I said. He froze. I didn't mean to read it. I was looking for a pen, and it was there, and my name was on the page. I couldn't stop. He closed his eyes. Valerie. How long? I asked. How long have you known who I am? 6 years. He opened his eyes. I saw you at a book signing. You were reading from your latest novel, and I was there with a friend who wanted to meet you. I didn't say anything. I just watched. You watched me for 6 years. Not like that, not. He ran a hand through his hair. I wasn't stalking you. Every time I saw you, I wanted to talk to you, and I never had the courage. And then I arrested you, and I thought, this is it. This is the universe giving me a second chance. And I still couldn't say anything. I stood up. Ethan, I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be scared. I'm just what? I'm relieved. I laughed, shaky and real. Because I've been feeling things I shouldn't be feeling, and I've been trying to convince myself it's just proximity, just convenience, just me being lonely, and now I know it's not just me. He took a step forward. What are you saying? I'm saying, I said, that I don't want to be just partners. I don't want it to be paper. I want it to be real. I want to know if you want that too. He didn't answer with words. He crossed the room and he kissed me. It was gentle at first, testing. He was waiting for me to pull away, but I didn't. I leaned into him and I kissed him back with everything I had, and when we finally broke apart, he was smiling. Real, he said. I want real. The first week of real was terrifying. Not because it was bad, it wasn't. If it was the opposite of BAD, IT was waking up to coffee already brewing and a note that said, "You're beautiful when you sleep, but also you snore a little, and I love it." It was him coming home late and kissing me awake just to tell me about his day. It was laughter and quiet dinners and the slow, terrifying feeling of falling into something I'd never let myself believe I deserved. But real relationships come with real complications, and mine came with a police record and a neighbor who wanted me dead. Luke was released on bail 3 days later. I found out when Ethan's phone rang in the middle of dinner, a call from the station. He stepped into the hallway, but I could still hear his voice low and controlled, the way he talked when he was trying not to show how angry he was. He's not supposed to be out. There's a restraining order. A pause. Then you're not doing your job. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, walked back into the kitchen, and kissed my forehead. I have to go, Luke's out. Someone at the courthouse made a mistake. They're trying to fix it, but in the meantime, I'm going to make sure he's picked up again. Picked up? He just got out. And he's already violated the terms of his release. He was seen near the building. I felt my stomach drop. Near this building? He didn't get close, but he was in the vicinity. I'm not taking chances. He grabbed his coat. Stay inside. Lock the doors. I'll call you when it's handled. He was gone before I could say another word. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, the security feed on my phone, watching the hallway outside Ethan's apartment. Nothing moved. Nothing happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. At 3 a.m., I got a text from him. Asterisk, he's been picked up. Booking him again. I'll be home soon. Asterisk. I exhaled. Asterisk, I was worried. Asterisk. Asterisk, don't be. I told you. I'll keep you safe. Asterisk. Asterisk, I know. Asterisk. Asterisk, go to sleep. I'll be there before you wake up. Asterisk. I tried to sleep, that I really did, but my brain wouldn't stop churning, reevaluating everything I'd assumed about the past few weeks, the arrests, the neighbors' reports. Luke's sudden appearance at his mother's house. None of it felt random anymore. IT felt like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't been given the edge pieces for. Ethan came home at dawn. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his shirt rumpled. But he smiled when he saw me awake. You should have slept. Couldn't. I made him sit down on the couch. Tell me what happened. Luke had a prior record, harassment, assault charges that got dropped because the victim didn't show. His mother's been covering for him for years. She filed a report on you not because she thought you were a drug dealer, but because she wanted you out of the building. I blinked. What? She was trying to get you evicted or arrested. Anything to get you out before her son got out of prison. She knew he'd come looking for a new victim, and she thought if you were gone, he'd move on. Mrs. Patterson? The one who made me pot roast. The same. I sat back, stunned. She was protecting him. She was enabling him. There's a difference. But to her, it was the same thing. I didn't know what to feel. Anger, mostly. But underneath it, something colder. She'd smiled at me. She'd fed me. She'd pretended to care, and all along, she'd been clearing the path for her son to hurt someone else. She's been arrested, Ethan said, for filing false reports. And she's been ordered to stay away from you. So is Luke. That's not going to stop him. No. He looked at me, his eyes steady. But I will. That's what I do. I stop people like him. And I'll keep stopping him, as long as it takes. I leaned into him, pressing my cheek to his chest. I hate that I need protecting. Everyone needs protecting sometimes. That's not weakness. That's being human. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. I tried to get back to my normal routine, writing, editing, pretending the world wasn't full of people who wanted to hurt me, but I couldn't focus. Every sound made me jump. Every stranger on the street made me look twice. I was living on the edge of my own fear, and I hated it. Ethan noticed. Of course he did. He noticed everything. You need to get out, he said one evening, coming home early. You're driving yourself crazy in here. I'm not crazy. I'm cautious. You're scared, and that's okay. But hiding isn't the same as healing. Since when are you a therapist? He laughed, pulling me into a hug. Since I started living with someone who needs one. Sarah came to visit the next day. She took one look at me and said, "You're glowing, and also slightly frantic. Which is it?" "Both." I sat her down on the couch and told her everything. The diary, the kiss, the relationship, Luke, Mrs. Patterson, all of it. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said, "You know what? I'm not even surprised. You've always had terrible taste in men, but this one actually sounds decent." "He's more than decent." "Then why do you look like someone's about to drop a piano on your head?" Because I was waiting for the other shoe to drop, because I couldn't believe that something this good could happen to someone like me. Because I'd spent so many years alone that I convinced myself I was better off that way. "I don't know," I said. "I guess I'm just worried. About Luke. About him getting out again. About what happens next." Sarah squeezed my hand. "Then stop worrying. You've got a man who literally has the power to arrest anyone who threatens you, and you've got me, who will key their car if I have to. We've got you covered." The next week, Ethan came home with a folder. "I need to talk to you about something," he said, "and I need you to not freak out." Those are the exact words you say before someone freaks out. "I know, and I'm sorry, but there's something I haven't told you about why I was really at your building that first day." I went cold. The drug arrest? The neighbor's report. That was real, but it's not why I was there. I was already in the area. investigating someone else. A case that's been ongoing for months. Who? Mrs. Patterson's son, Luke. He's connected to a larger operation. Distribution, money laundering, the works. We've been building a case against him for a while. The neighbor's report about you was it was a coincidence. But when I saw your name on the file, You took the case. Volunteered for it. He met my eyes. I didn't want anyone else handling it. I wanted to make sure you were safe. I felt like the floor had shifted under me. You were investigating him before I ever got arrested. Before any of this happened. Yes. And you didn't tell me. I couldn't. It was an open case. And I didn't want you to think. Think what? That you were using me? That this was all just a job? No. He reached for me, but I pulled back. Valerie, I told you about the diary, about how I've known you for years. That was real. This is real. The case was real too, but it's not. It's not the reason I'm here. Then why didn't you tell me? Before? When we started dating? Because I was scared. His voice cracked. I was scared that if you knew, you'd think I was just a cop doing a job that I didn't actually care, and I do care. I care more than I've ever cared about anything. I wanted to be angry that I wanted to yell and storm out and make him feel as betrayed as I felt, but I couldn't. Because I understood, maybe better than anyone, what it felt like to hide something because you were afraid of what the truth would cost. I need time, I said. Just time to process. He nodded. I'll wait, however long it takes. I didn't sleep in his room that night. I stayed in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, trying to untangle the knot in my chest. He'd been investigating Luke before he knew me. He'd been drawn to me anyway. And somewhere in the middle, the case and the relationship had become the same thing. 2 reasons to protect me, 2 reasons to stay. It wasn't the same as lying, but it felt close enough. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter. Asterisk, I'm taking the day off. I'm going to the station to close the case file on Luke. I want to be done with it. I want to prove to you that I'm not hiding anything. I'll be back by dinner. Ethan, asterisk. I read the note 3 times. Then I texted him. Asterisk, you don't have to prove anything, but I appreciate it. Asterisk. His reply came back. Asterisk, I know, but I want to. Asterisk. I spent the day cleaning, nervous energy. Mostly did I scrub the counters, organize the bookshelf, rearrange the pantry. It was only when I was pulling out a bag of groceries from the back of the cabinet that I found the envelope. It was plain, unmarked, shoved behind the canned goods like someone had been in a hurry to hide it. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside were copies of police reports, Luke's arrest history, witness statements. And at the bottom, tucked in a sealed plastic sleeve, a photo of me, taken from across the street, the day I'd moved into my apartment. My blood turned to ice. I called Ethan immediately. He picked up on the first ring. Valerie? What's wrong? Someone's been watching me, I said. There's an envelope in your kitchen, with photos of me, and Luke's records. I don't know how it got here. Don't touch anything. Don't move. I'm coming home. I'm not moving. I'm frozen. Ethan, who would? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. He arrived in 10 minutes, out of breath, his uniform rumpled. He saw the envelope on the counter and didn't touch it. Forensics, he said. I'm calling them in. Who put that there? I don't know, but it wasn't Luke. He's still in custody. Someone else is involved. I thought about Mrs. Patterson, about her desperate attempts to keep her son out of trouble, about the way she'd watched me, always watching, always waiting. His mother, I said. She's got access to your building. She could have come in while we were both gone. Ethan's jaw tightened. I'll check the security logs, and I'll have someone at the station call her in for questioning. The forensics team arrived within the hour. They dusted for prints, bagged the envelope, took statements. I sat on the couch, shaking, while Ethan handled everything. When the team left, he sat down beside me. I'm going to protect you, he said. I've been trying to protect you from the moment we met, and I know I should have told you about the case, and I know I failed at that. But I'm never going to fail at keeping you safe. I leaned into him, too tired to stay angry. I believe you. The next day, Mrs. Patterson was arrested again. This time, it